Hello, costume students. Today we're going to start a new section, which overall is labeled the Renaissance, which will consist of three periods. First off, the actual Renaissance itself, which consists of the Italian Renaissance, some Northern Europe and European Renaissance, and then the English Tudor period. We're also going to focus on a couple of fashion eras in the 17th century, and then we're going to step outside the Western world for a little bit and look at the Ottoman Empire. But first, let's start with the Renaissance. I've broken this up into several parts so that it will fit on YouTube. YouTube won't allow me to upload long narrated slideshows, so I'm broken this up in about 4 or 5 parts. Part A is going to be just an overview and a look at some fabric innovations, and then we'll go from there. In case you didn't know it, Renaissance means rebirth. It began in the late 14th, early 15th century in Italy. Now you see, there was some overlap with the medieval period, right? We did sections on 14th, 15th century. In the Middle Ages, this is going concurrently. It's not like in 1450 somebody turned over a calendar page and it said Renaissance starts today. Learn to read. So this is kind of going on at the same time. This is mostly starting in Italy and then fanning out into the rest of Europe. Two things fueled this. The movement of Greek and Roman manuscripts to Italy after the fall of Constantinople, and the exile of the Pope to Avignon, France, who stayed there for many, many years. And what this did was create a loose confederation of city-states run by autocratic rulers. Some were ancient noble families. Some were condottieri, mercenary military leaders who took over a city-state. And then we also have a rising, powerful merchant class. Basically, they were all known as princes, and they were increasingly secular, pretty liberal. There you can see, let's bring out my little clicker there. You can see we have the Duchy of Milan, check. Republic of Venice, check. Republic of Lucca, Ferrara, so forth and so on. The Papal States, which belonged to the Pope. The Pope wasn't there, still pretty liberal, but it was still their land, so to speak. As you can see, just that with the others, it was a pretty happy area with these city-states, and they all pretty much got along. They fought wars, and other cities tried to break away and were pulled back in, but also just city-states. Also, we see over here in the east, that way. That worked out well. There you go. Trade established during the era of the Crusades, so it becomes, and they had a good sea trade route or system. So this area is secular. It does have a lot of religious people or old school nobility sucking up funds, so they become exceedingly wealthy. Also, about the same time, even though I made that crack about learning to read, people did, because we have printing presses now. We have publishing. And what does publishing do? It lets you make books easier when you don't have to copy out every book by hand. So you get a wide dissemination of ideas. So it's not really an accident. It's not a coincidence that this Enlightenment, this era of learning, coincided at the same time of the invention of the printing press. The two go hand in hand. As I said, in the 16th century, the French and German culture were highly influenced by the Italian Renaissance. So through that period, the 14th, 15th, 16th, Italy is at the center of the Renaissance and at the center of this idea of secularism and also humanism. The human soul is the center of life, not particularly God there. However, it was rich, but it was also a battleground. When the Pope came back, there was a war between the Holy Roman Empire and Spain, and they weren't about to let these hippies in these city-states, be in charge of the Pope and the Catholic Church. So they pretty much occupied it. And from 1525 until the 19th century, it's the end of the city-states, and Italy would be an occupied land. But in that period before, oh, what things were accomplished. Let me go through this quickly. socially divided between aristocracy, merchant class, artists and artisans, and then your laborers and rural peasants. So we don't see a slavery system. That's going out of vogue, I'm happy to say. Now, the thing about merchant class artists and artisans, they have a high degree of status and very well respected. Merchants, not so much, but they had a lot of power and a lot of money. Lorenzo de' Medici here, you see the Prince of Florence was a merchant. He wasn't really nobility. Same with the Borgias, who were in Rome, I believe. Don't quote me on that. I think they are. Came from the merchant class. Now, when you're a merchant, you want to show how well off you are. This is true even today. So how do you do that? You dress well. You commission works of art to show how cultured you are. So if you're a Michelangelo or a Botticelli or any sort of artist, I can't think of the guy who did the dome, St. Peter's Dome, the architect, Brunelleschi, you're going to be very well respected. They want the best craftsmen, the best artists and artisans to design their buildings, to fill it with beautiful art, and to make, well, Michelangelo didn't make clothes, of course, but to make beautiful clothes. So just how important you are. We also have some sumptuary laws coming into effect. The Guardaroba, which dictates that each person is allowed only 2 indoor ensembles and a mantle for outdoor wear. If you're a middle-class family, you get 1 set of new clothes a year. If you're poor, you get donations. Sort of like Salvation Army, I guess. A little bit about fabric productions. We don't have a lot of innovations in the textile industry at this time. However, Italian silk and wool, techniques for weaving them are becoming more sophisticated, and Italian silk and wool become the finest in Europe. Also, because of aforesaid publishing, we get a widespread exposure to new ideas and books, new styles. So we see more interest in fashion. Ooh, I want to look like that guy. Ooh, she looks beautiful. I want that. So we start to see changes in tastes happening with increasingly regularity. Whereas with the Greeks or the Romans, you won't see change for hundreds of years. Here, it's coming around in a matter of years, or even less. So, another important contribution, the rise of the prominence of the tailor, the cutter and the tailor. We've had tailors around, but usually they made clothes as chosen by their clients. But now we start to see fashion become more widely disseminated. They become more important in copying increasingly complicated patterns and form-fitting garments. So important that Giovanni Battista Moroni painted a portrait of a tailor, a successful tailor. Cutters also important. The cutters are responsible for cutting out the patterns as dictated by the tailor. So the tailor will make the pattern, the cutter will cut it and drape it, and then the tailor will take it and stitch it. So we start to see a growing sophistication in the clothing industry. They did have their own mercantile guild, supplanting weavers and dyers as the primary arbiters of fashionable dress. And they realized that quality workmanship and details would what sell clothes. So over centuries, they honed their techniques, closely guarded secrets, and techniques. Even today, Italian tailors have a reputation for excellent craftsmen and perfectly fitted garments. Here's an example of an Armani suit. Exquisite, renowned Italian silk done by very talented tailors and cutters and pattern makers. We have a couple things. Like I said, the rest of Europe was also included. So here's some innovations in embroidery. In Spain, we have Spanish work, which you see is silk, black embroidery on white linen. Black and white will play a big part in the Spanish style, as you will see later. Laces or fillet, embroidered patterns on a net background, so it kind of looks like a throw pillow in your aunt's home. Cut work, which is just basically embroidery on solid cloth with the open spaces cut away. All these mostly are collars and cuffs, by the way. And then, of course, lace, embroidery with no background. So we have that. 2 new fabrics. Now, these are fabric weaves. This isn't really even though we call them a fabric, the main thing is this is the weave. So taffeta. You can say, oh, there's a taffeta fabric. Well, there's not really. It's a weave. It's a lustrous, medium weight, plain weave with a slightly ribbed appearance in the filling. It's used a lot with silk. When you do a taffeta weave on silk, It gives it this crispness, lots of body, and a rustle. So that's what it is, a slightly ribbed appearance in the filling. Moire, in the United States it's moire. In the British Isles they call it moi. That R is off, but we Americans like to harden our R's. Moire. So moire. It's also a finish. Even though it's listed, if you go to a fabric store, you might get more fabric, but it's basically a weave. And again, it can be linen, it can be, mostly it's silk. It's a finish that creates lustrous or dull effects on the surface of a woven pattern, so you get this kind of, moire effect there. You have crushed and uncrushed parts of the fabric that reflect light differently. It's a ripple pattern. So what you do is you can take silk or velvet and crush it and make that weave, have uncrushed and crushed parts, put that weave in, also in different colors, and you get the moire effect. I know I'm explaining that inelegantly, but that's the best I got right now, folks. Also, this is interesting. We have to talk about two new dyes that have become extremely popular and they're still around. Indigo. Indigo, a deep, rich blue that comes from a plant found in tropical regions. Most of the indigo is imported from India and that area of the world. Before that, we had woad as the sort of preferred blue dye. And it was okay, but this is this deep, clotted, rich color, like Tyrian purple almost, but bluish purple. It was just a mania for it, and it was really color fast. It would not fade hardly at all. You see, it came from plants. They would make little bricks of it, as you can see in the lower picture there. That would be put into the water, into the mordant, and then dye the clothes in them. It's interesting. Also, for a time, in the antebellum South, particularly in Mississippi, there were indigo plantations. Now, this was kind of a false indigo. It wasn't as color fast. It was a cheaper version, and turned out not to be economically feasible. And I believe this is mentioned in The Robber Bridegroom, excuse me, that there is a plantation system that had indigo. Some of the remains of those old plantations can still be seen today. Anyway, in Europe, indigo rules. Part of one of the reasons that Columbus went out and searched for alternate passages to India, and caused all that rigmarole, discovering, I'll say quote unquote, discovering the New World, finding the New World for the Italians and the Spaniards, is looking for a way to get indigo faster to Europe. All right, let's move on. Cochineal. Carmine, introduced to Spanish, Dutch, and English colonies in the New World. It's extracted from the cochineal insect, a little bug, kind of like a little mite or tick. And what you do is you take the bodies of these, grind them up, boil them in ammonia, and set with an alum mordant to make this rich red color. Excellent for wool. Not so great on cotton. Cotton, it would run, it would run like a marathon runner, but really good for wool. And they have a way now. There's it's very big industry in Mexico now, today. And there's a way that you don't have to kill all these cochineals. There's a way to milk them, as I understand it, so that you get the carmine out, but you let the bugs survive. I guess it's good to have live bugs because you don't have to keep hunting them and crushing them. That is the end of Part A. Part B begins with men's clothing of the Italian Renaissance and subsequently Northern Europe. Thanks for listening.